Well, hello, class, and let's see. It is just about 8 o'clock on Tuesday evening, so I'm coming to you live from my living room. So I'm all bundled up, as I'm sure that you have noticed that it is um, really, really cold outside. Not sure what's going on with that, but it is frigid. I've been riding my bike to work and riding home in the evenings, and uh, not really able to feel my fingers for a while. So hope you're staying warm. As we've talked about, we will be meeting, and I say meeting for class online this week. So we've got a couple of things that I want you to take care of during our time together in the online classroom. Okay, so if you click over to the forums, I want us to look at a couple of different things, some similar to what we've been doing in some of our previous online um, learning experiences. But I want to come over here and I want you to look over in week 7 and just kind of follow along with me. So if you're not yet to Sakai in the forum section, why don't you hit pause on the video and go over there so we can kind of look at these things together. Okay, so once you're in there, I want you to notice that there are a few extra video areas that we're going to look at this week. Okay, so the first one you'll see there's a video from Tim Keller on work and fulfillment. Okay, so obviously we're done with every good endeavor, but I want us to kind of hear from Keller in his own words what it is that he has to say about work and fulfillment. So this is a great video that it's actually an interview that was conducted a number of years ago as the book was just coming out, and it was actually done by on Morning Joe. I'm drawing a blank on his name, but the host of Morning Joe, Joe, and he's now got somebody else to host with him. I can't remember her name either. I'm not really like a news watching person, but on MSNBC, and they gave him a platform to just talk about God's ideal for work. And so I thought it was a great video to spend some time just kind of as you think about that text, how do you reflect back on it? And I think even some of our conversation that we had in class on Thursday, which was, I think, a really meaningful discussion on what is it that Keller is saying and how do we relate that to our lives personally. I think it's meaningful. So it's about 9 minutes long, very much worth your while. There's one question that you'll come respond to after you've watched that video. Okay. Second thing, I want you to hear from each person in the class of where you currently are in your vocational profile and plan. So there's a number of questions in there. So just talk about where are you currently? Where are you kind of in the process? How has it been for you? What are things that you've taken away from the learning experience? Are there ups and downs, highs and lows? So get into all those questions as well. Okay. Third thing you'll look at is there's a discussion. This is where your discussion takes place on the book Transitions. Okay. So there's a number of questions that I want you to spend some time looking at in there. And just, again, reflect on what it means to you. So this is a class that in many ways is about you. And so we want you to think about you. Okay. So I think that some of these prompts, these questions will help you along the way to think very, I think, intentionally, strategically even about what do you think about the content and so forth, and then getting them in writing. And even reading through what your classmates have said, I think will be a helpful thing for you to spend some time in dialogue about, okay? And then there's a couple of assessments here, so we haven't gotten to these yet, but these are your entrepreneurial leadership assessments. And here again, these are not, I should say, they're not official assessments. There's actually a Gallup assessment, same folks that did the Strengths Finder that came out with entrepreneurship. Strengths Finder, I think is actually what it was called. And for some reason, they did away with the book. I had used it 1 year, and then it was gone. The assessment is really, really well done, though. It gives you great results, and it's no longer around. So we don't have that assessment to pull from, but the idea, as we talk about entrepreneurship, even though we talked very briefly in class a couple of weeks ago, I want to revisit this, okay? And again, hear me. I'm not trying to say all of us should be entrepreneurs at all. But I do want us to think about what does it mean for us in our everyday work? How do we be creative and perhaps even take, the mundane things that you and I have to do on an everyday basis and use our creativity to think about them, an entrepreneur, if you will, those realities to do things a little bit differently, okay? So be thinking about that and what it means from an entrepreneurship standpoint. Not only will we take these assessments, but there's a number of videos in the next item down below. It just says videos, and there's 3 of them, okay? So you'll find in there, when you get in there, there's actually a note that says that you don't have to watch all of them, but I would encourage you to, because I think there's some meaningful discussion opportunities in there, okay? So what is your understanding of entrepreneurship? We talked about this, but again, just kind of flesh this out. How does it apply to leadership? And here's an important one. How do you see the Christian faith connecting to entrepreneurship? And then I would even go a step further. Do you believe that entrepreneurship is an important factor when promoting human flourishing and the common good? So again, reflect back on the conversation we had in class, or maybe you've developed some additional thoughts around that. Because I think that we are, in some ways, we are all entrepreneurs, if you will, meaning that we are in the business of making new things. Okay, so think about that as kind of your framework, all right? And then there's a number of articles that I want you to spend some time reading that are there. There's a couple of career development specific ones. And then I want you, I'm gonna talk really briefly about an article that I'm gonna upload separately, okay? And I want you to spend some time thinking about this. And this gets at the idea, we've talked about positive psychology a little bit, we talked about vocational psychology, we've talked about career development, but there's this idea when you look at all of these realities that they would refer to as positive career development, okay? Think about this from an organizational standpoint. So even as you're putting your finishing touches on your career development consulting projects, your presentations, which we'll talk about that, I'll share another email later this week as we're going to kind of think about what that looks like for week 8. I want you to be thinking about this idea of positive career development, okay? Now, I will say this. I think that in our conversation that we had, or I guess the conversations, multiple that we've had about career development, a lot of great content was discussed. Okay, a lot of you said things that I think were meaningful in the sense that it wasn't about getting, excuse me, it wasn't about getting employees from a place of deficiency to normal, right, to kind of a zero level playing field. It was taking them and even going above and beyond. So I've been listening to some radio news spots, I guess you could say, about is well-being worth it? Is well-being worth it as far as an organization or company paying for well-being programs? And I always am a little distrustful, if you will, of research, statistics, especially when it's in the media. Maybe that's wrong of me, but I always, have a feeling that someone's got an agenda there. So, because when you look at actual organizations, you look at the data, even, and I know I'm going to statistics, but what Gallup has put forth that says that well-being programs actually save organizations money. And then when you have people that are saying it doesn't make any difference, somebody has to be correct, right? So how do we look at this from a positive psychology or a positive career development standpoint? Okay, so I've attached an article. It's about 5 or 6 pages long as far as content goes, maybe 6 or 7. And it's just got some good things to say. Now, it's talking about things from a UK perspective. It's from the Institute for Employment Studies. I want you just to spend some time thinking about this. It starts the question of why should employers embrace career development more wholeheartedly? And I think that one of the things that we miss sometimes is we look at career development more as a remediation than we do as a developmental process. Okay, so I want you to think about kind of through that lens. Okay, so as we talk about vocation, we talk about career development, all of these things, obviously, they're not things that just be discussed in a vacuum. We've talked about how they should be put into practice, and so even within your organizations, as you think about your real best self, or maybe if you did 503 and you took that, we talked about the exercise, the assignment of creating the world's most ideal or best work situation or workplace. How will you now, with knowing what you know, go into your workplaces? How will you treat things a bit differently? How will you treat people a bit differently? How will you conduct your leadership, your management, your supervision in a way that doesn't just get at checking boxes, right? So just going through the motions. I've got this rubric that says I should do this, this, and that to do career development, which is really just a PR thing to say that we do career development with our employees. Okay. So my hope is, as you think about these things deeply, you think even about transitions and people changing positions, maybe leaving an organization, but also staying in the organization and changing to a different role. And it gets to that question again. So what happens if we develop our people, we train them, we invest money in them, we pay for master's degrees, and they leave? All these different developmental aspects. And then the question in response is, well, what happens if we don't and they stay? So we want to prepare our people to be successful. And I hope that all of this content together, all the things you think about, are really kind of helping to form your understanding of vocation, your understanding of career development. yes, for you, absolutely for you, but also so you can then turn around and help those people in your lives to think about these things deeply in meaningful ways as well. So have a great week 7. Look forward to being back week 8. If I can be of help or service or support in any way, please let me know. Email me, call me. We can figure out a time to talk, or we can even meet in person. All right, so have a great rest of the week, and we will see you online.